Jim Salisbury, Phillies insider for NBC Sports Philadelphia. Great follow on Twitter at Jim Salisbury NBCS, and follow NBCS Philly for all your Phils news throughout the season. Look forward to talking with him throughout the Phillies season down there in Florida as they get set to take on the Pirates. Kind enough to join me on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Jimmy, how you been, pal?
I'm doing well. How about you, Rich?
I'm doing well. Good to talk to you again, and let's get right into it. I'm first and foremost, I'm curious to get your thoughts. We'll get to how you envision the opening day lineup, but I'm curious about the pen. Because if you look at what's transpired over the last several years, it's kind of been their bugaboo, especially last year. But now they're pretty deep. I mean, if they're talking 6, 7, 8 guys, that can be potential guys, not only to be guys coming out of the pen or middle relief. You throw in Neshek, Neris, K-Rod, Garcia. You've got so many opportunities here. I mean, are we about to say that the Phillies bullpen could be quite deep this year?
I do think it'll be deep. It was actually much improved about the last 6 or 8 weeks last year. You had some guys really step up, and Adam Morgan pitched lights out.
Mm-hmm.
Louis Garcia pitched very, very well down the stretch. Obviously, these are guys that have talent, but they've never really put it together for a full season, so I'm kind of eager to see where that takes them. But Hector Neris was lights out after about the middle of June. I think he was 21 for 21 after like June 25th or something like that. So, it is deeper because you had some guys in-house improve last year that figure to contribute this year. And they went out and signed 2 free agents, Tommy Hunter and Pat Neshek. I mean, Neshek was here for 3+ months last year and was terrific. He was their only all-star. Had an unbelievable year. He's an amazing strike thrower. He only gave up 5 runs all year last year. And, they brought, as I mentioned, Hunter. So I think, their strategy, I think they'll go with an 8-man bullpen. And you have a lot of question marks in the rotation. I think a lot of nights you're going to see some high pitch counts in the rotation. And you'll see them in the bullpen in the 6th inning. And they're hoping that the fact that bullpen should be conceivably stronger, definitely deeper, they're hoping that's going to keep them in games in the middle innings and give this offense a fighting chance in the late innings.
Yeah, and you mentioned Garcia, hard thrower, and of course the lefty and Morgan, and spot on. I mean, it took him a couple months really to find his bullpen footing, but he pitched well. I mean, you look at that 20-25 game stretch last August and September. You mentioned the aforementioned starting rotation. You've got, 6, 7, 8 guys now vying really for 5 spots in that rotation. How do you think it plays out? I mean, do you believe there's going to be any surprises? Because we know Nola is going to be the workhorse. I mean, if anything, I guess you would dub him, their number one, if we want to deem it like that.
I don't think they have the prototypical number one. I think they have pretty much a bunch of guys that profile as, 3s, 4s, and 5s. Mm-hmm. And Nola will be the opening day starter, and that is not to suggest one iota of that. I don't think Nola is terrific. I don't think, I think he's a special pitcher. I think he's going to be an awfully good major leaguer for a long time. But he's not. I don't think he's Clayton Kershaw either. And I think you kind of need one of those type of guys if you really want to go, become a championship team. But that said, I'm a huge Nola fan. His coming back last year from that elbow injury and having that terrific season that he had, to me, was one of the number one bright spots. So, he'll go opening day, followed probably by, in some order, Eichhoff, who pitches today. Vince Velasquez, who has a big arm, is in great shape, but obviously needs to put it together. I think Nick Pivetta has a pretty good shot of being in there, another really big arm that, if he puts it together, you might be looking at that, number 2-ish type starter on a good team. So he's got a lot of ability. And then, a lot of guys, Mark Leiter, South Jersey kid, and Ben Lively, and Tom Eshelman, Jake Thompson. There's a kind of a, believe it or not, they actually have some starting pitching depth. It's not what you would call, upper tier starting pitching depth. It's not like they have a bunch of number ones knocking on the door, but they got guys who can give you some innings, and like a guy like Leiter, competes, throws about 10 different pitches, really knows how to pitch. They got some of those type of guys. So, and down below, starting to kind of matriculate to the Double-A level, you have some real power arms. Sanchez, Kilome. Those guys are going to start arriving at Double-A. A guy named Sir Anthony Dominguez is going to go to the bullpen. So now you have upper tier potential starting to get toward Double-A. So, but that's kind of the way the rotation shapes up at the big leagues with those guys I mentioned. And then, I guess there's always a chance Jake Arrieta ends up here if he would take a 3-year deal.
He keeps waiting. He might not have a choice, right?
he might not. He might not. So, though I think he will have choices on short-term deals, probably a few of them, and maybe more of a slam dunk contender. That might help him there. But I'll tell you what, if he would take a 3-year deal, I think there's one here waiting for him in Philadelphia. But that's about all I know on that.
Now, real quick, and then I want to get a point on Nola to Arrieta real quick. And I remember when the Phillies met with him and Boris in the winter meetings in the offseason, and it was smart. They were prudent. They did not want to commit to a long-term deal, and I get that. So when you have the Linds and the Cobbs and the Arrietas out there, listen, no one's getting that Darvish contract. I don't like those contracts because I don't want to pay someone $25-30 million when they're on the back end of 33, 34 years old. But you mentioned, a 3-year contract, a serviceable contract. I mean, to me, it's a question of if he's going to have any other suitors, because again, opening day is right around the corner, and the best spot for him. And if you look at the Phillies, people believe they're going to be a lot more competitive this year, so it could potentially be a good fit because now you are adding what you would deem as a certified number one. To go with the Nolas and the aforementioned other pitchers, which to me gives them a ton more depth and it makes them an interesting case going into the season. Now, I don't know if it's going to happen. But you're right. I mean, if it's there, I don't know. If the money's there and the Phillies really believe it, I think you go full force and at least you throw 3 years at him.
I believe they have. It's up to him. And he would make them instantly better. I could see them, possibly nibbling around that second wild card if that were the case. But, again, if Washington Nationals are in it like we think they are,
yeah.
Who are you going to pick? A team that could go to the World Series or a team that,
that's true.
A million things have to go right for them to go to the World Series. So, I'm not sure what's going to happen there. But we continue to watch it.
Yeah, and you're right. With the Nats and Strasburg, and then a Scherzer, and then you have that potential Game 3 starter. Going back to Nola real quick, then I want to get to the lineup. You mentioned that you believe he's got some, or he's at least poised to really have a nice career. And, you hit the ebb and flow, the rookie season, the sophomore season, where you kind of go up and down. And then we saw what happened a couple of Junes ago with the ERA that was well over 10. He was giving up a bunch of runs. And then he comes back down, bounce back year in 2017, starts off rough in April, May. But then in July, he was basically unhittable. I mean, he had that career month. I mean, do you believe this is the year where he does put it all together?
I certainly think all the tools are there, and now you've added in experience, and, he's experienced great highs, as you mentioned, last year, that 12 starts he put together, mostly in July and June, July. The year before, he struggled with performance, he had some health issues, and, there's a kind of another name for those things when you struggle. They're called learning experiences. They can only help you down the road. So I do think he is knocking on the door of his prime, and I think he's going to be an awfully good one. And what I always say about Aaron Nola is I would take a dozen of those guys. Okay. He's very professional. He's a 100% pitcher. He's not a thrower. He moves the ball around, hits spots, changes speeds, and he's smart. He's a 100% pitcher, and he's going to have a real nice career, and I think they're fortunate that he's a Philly.
Jimmy, how do you envision this lineup? You got Hernandez, second baseman, where I think he can actually have a breakout year. I'm high on him, and then you look at it, after that, he's got strong on-base skills. You foresee Santana in the second hole, Hoskins batting cleanup here at the fourth spot. I mean, how do you envision this lineup?
I think Kapler's going to mix it up a lot. I think he's one of those guys that's going to move guys around depending on that night's matchup. They're going to be very matchup-oriented because they've built such a big analytics department. They're digging into data on different pitchers and different guys are going to face on different nights. So you could see his lineups vary a little bit here. But Kapler has mentioned that he believes that 2 and 4 are the most important spots in the lineup. I believe from, kind of listening to him, I've kind of drawn the conclusion he wants his best hitter, too. So I think you might see Santana at least, a good chunk of the time, maybe bat 2 behind Hernandez. And then I don't know what they'll do at 3. I would suspect maybe Herrera and then, Hoskins in the cleanup spot. And then, Williams and Franco and all those guys. Big year for Franco. He's got a lot to prove, working hard. trying to make the adjustments that, could help him take off. And then you got J.P. Crawford moving in at shortstop. And to me, that's one of the interesting storylines to watch because they traded away a very, very gifted defender that the pitchers, he did a great job behind those pitchers. Freddie Galvis are going to miss him. But Crawford's been a very highly touted guy who, to me, did not tear up AAA. Sort of has been handed this job. We're going to see what he can do with it.
Yeah, trading away Galvis to San Diego in December. Two more before I let you get out of here. I'm curious, you mentioned the manager, and are there going to be some nights where Philly fans are going to get a little frustrated by outside the box / managerial decisions? Like it might not always be aesthetically pleasing. What's that, Jim?
Not if they win. There'll be no frustration if they win. It's all about winning. If you win, then all of a sudden the unorthodox becomes genius. Yeah. So we'll see. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, he definitely seems like he's a different bird. He's a different animal, which is sometimes it's good. Sometimes you got to go outside the box and you need a fresh start.
Yeah, and again, if he wins, everybody's going to be, there'll be a whole new generation of Gabe Kapler managers in the minor leagues. Yeah. He's very analytically inclined. He's very intense, very passionate, very positive. He's always talking to people, communicating with people, and he's really plugged into the front office. He's almost like an extension of the front office. I mean, he was a front office man over with LA.
Yep.
Like I said, he's analytically inclined. He was analytically inclined when it wasn't even in vogue, when he was still a player. I've spoken to teammates of his that said he was up on all this stuff. So, that's the way they kind of want to run things from the top right down through the dugout. And, we're going to see if it works. I mean, he's going to be nothing if not prepared.
Right.
I mean, he really is very, very prepared. He spent the entire winter breaking down film, meeting with guys, planning the spring training. And, he's going to approach the season the same way. And, but, Rich, it always comes down to the guys on the field.
Yep, no doubt.
They got to be good players. They got to be good players, and they got to play good.
I know.
That's why Charlie Manuel was a great manager, a legendary manager on the Wall of Fame. He'll be the first one to tell you this because he had good players, and he was smart enough to get out of their way and let them play.
Let me leave you on this. Great insight as always. I went back and for some reason I was pulling up the Royals a couple of years ago when they beat the Mets and they started to play a little small ball. And the Phillies, they make the move for Santana, especially in that sandbox in Philly, potential to hit 25, 30 home runs. Hoskins, maybe he cools off a little bit and doesn't put up those gaudy numbers, but still, you look at the players they have. Do you think the Phillies will test out a little more when it comes to small ball because they've got some speed now? You're looking at guys like Franco and Herrera and guys like that. Or do you think they'll be more of a team, I don't want to say relies on the long ball, or do you envision more small ball? Scratching and clawing. Some games might be 2-1, 3-2, stealing some bases.
A lot of that comes down to your personnel. I mean, I don't know that they have a lot of guys who are going to bunt. I think they would like to see that on-base percentage improve, and conceivably it should with the addition of Crawford and Santana and a full season of Hoskins. And then I think they want to drive the ball. I mean, they want Michael Franco to drive the ball. They want Nick Williams to drive the ball. They want Aaron Altair to drive the ball. There may be nights when somebody bunts, but I don't see a lineup that is really put together that way. I think they could run a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
When Kingery gets here, he stated that he'd like to steal 45 bags. He'll get here at some point. They would like to, Cesar is always talking about running more, but
yep.
I think that they want to try to load up on the bases and try to hit the ball in the gaps.
Well, if anything, listen, we got a long way to go. I mean, opening day is right around the corner, but if they're in it, it's competitive. We got more to talk about come in August and September. But, Jim, I always appreciate the insight, pal. Hopefully we can talk throughout the season. Always appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, Rich. Take care.
You got it. Be well. Jimmy Salisbury, Phillies Insider for NBC Sports Philadelphia. Great follow on Twitter at J Salisbury NBCS, and also follow on NBCS Philly for all your Phillies news throughout the season.